Good afternoon, and welcome to Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. This is where you'll meet the most intelligent, talented, and creative people who come to share tips, resources, and knowledge on various topics. Today, I'd like for you to join me in welcoming Mr. Anthony Casuccio, where he's going to talk about his mastering business and upcoming EP. But before I get into welcoming Anthony, I'd like to read a little bit about his bio, okay? To give you a little background about him. Anthony is a 25-year music veteran. His audio production work has been nominated for 3 Grammy Awards. It has reached gold record status and placed in various TV shows and commercials. His production work has resulted in numerous songs landing on Billboard's dance charts. He has mastered various albums for icons such as Johnny Cash, Tony Bennett, and Roy Orbison. As a band leader, songwriter, producer, and engineer, he successfully led his band A&L to the top of various charts worldwide. Anthony had 9 top 20 songs with the band and 3 solo songs on various UK indie music charts. They received radio play in over 70 countries throughout Europe and the USA. Now, there is so much more to this young man, and you're going to find out a little bit more about that as we get into this interview. So, welcome, Mr. Anthony.
Kelly, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this. I mean, COVID, I had wanted to reach out to you, but it's like, you know what? I'm just going to wait and wait because the time is going to be right. And I think the time is right. And when we get to talk a little bit more about, your audio mastering business and your upcoming EP, then I know what you've been doing. I know you've been
Awesome.
busy. So
I love being
before,
busy.
I love it too. So
Yeah.
before we talk about your audio mastering business and your upcoming EP release, I'd like to walk down memory lane with you. So, Anthony, we served on the board of governors for the San Francisco chapter of the National Recording Academy Arts and Sciences, also known as NARAS, and also the Grammy organization. So during that time, we became friends, and you became a mentor to my nephew, Marco Williams. He was pursuing his career in music, and now he's actually a photographer and a videographer, doing music videos for different artists. Do you remember that?
I do. I do. I actually have a lot of fond memories of us and being on the board of governors, in San Francisco. Besides your nephew, also us doing Grammy in the streets and the
Oh,
education
yes.
community and just going out to some schools and having a lot of fun and just I for me that's what got me into teaching, by the way. That's what started my whole
Okay.
teaching career. But just
Okay.
going out to these schools and saying, listen, if you want to be the next rock star or rap artist, you got to be able to read a contract or
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to understand the business side of things. And that was just a special time in my life,
Yeah.
and we shared some good things. Michael Exxon was the lawyer that we brought along with us.
Absolutely. That's my buddy. Michael and I
Yeah.
go even further back than you can even imagine. He and I
and,
went
uh,
to the
and
same high school.
really, I did not know that, but he
He
was,
was in my brother's band. He was in a band with my brother in them.
oh my gosh, that's
prime
wild.
sus prime suspect. Oh yeah. So Michael and I, but we really
and,
had
and, and
Michael's
his career
family.
is, yeah, his career is just amazing. But just having these people that we had access to and bringing them
Yes.
into the school system and just
Yeah.
saying, hey, here's a thing called copyright and royalties. You need to
Yeah.
understand and educate yourself with these. It was very empowering to me and really gave me the whereabouts to want to go out and share that knowledge with students.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a wonderful time. Definitely. I think Merle Saunders was our ED at that time. He
Yep.
was the executive director over there. Yeah. And then, yeah, so it was a wonderful time. So now I would like for you to give us a little bit of background on where you were born and raised and some of the schools you attended.
Sure. So I was born in upstate New York in a suburb of Buffalo, called Williamsville. And I kind of, when I've gone around the country and I've talked, I kind of joke about that, especially with who the artists were that I started to work with. So I grew up went to the school system in very suburban, America. Just, if you watch John Hughes movies, I'm dating myself here. That was my
Okay.
upbringing, Pretty in Pink and
Okay.
those
Okay.
movies. And I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen and this great guitar player. And I went to a state school that had a really amazing recording technology program. So I was a product of public schools. And I just laugh because when I talk to people, I'm like, I've worked with so many hip hop artists and dance artists, and they look at me and they're like, "What's your background?" I said, "I don't know, white kid in suburbia who wanted to be Eddie Van Halen." So, um, but I'm back here, and that's the beauty of it is, um, with the advent of the internet and whatnot, I've been able to come back to where I grew up and make an impact on this community
Okay.
and still do all these great things that I do in the music industry and give back by teaching.
Okay. So now you actually kind of answered a little bit about my second question, but I'm sure you can elaborate a little bit more on it. So, what or who inspired you to become a musician?
And it's funny, I do say Eddie Van Halen a lot because I loved him as a guitar player when I was in high school. But really, for me, um, I was a Beatles fan.
Oh,
So,
okay.
which is, of course, I'm a product of the 80s and they were a product of the 60s, but I in middle school got a couple Beatles records and started listening to them and really started picking apart their songwriting, their production skills, how they arranged music, and that stuck with me till today. I still draw upon those elements. I also, growing up in upstate New York, close to the Canadian border, there were two bands, one called Rush and another called Triumph. They were these power trios in the late 70s and the 80s that really inspired me as a guitar player, much more than Eddie Van Halen. These
Okay.
were part of this progressive type um, music. But yeah, that, and then also I played the trumpet and the euphonium in school, so I was exposed to classical music as well, and I think that also had a profound impact on me. Some of my band directors and teachers, just to understand the basics of music. And if I kind of felt like, well, listen, if I want to be successful in music, I really need to learn the language.
Hmm.
And those are the people who helped me learn the language.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. When you talked about the Beatles, because I definitely enjoyed the Beatles music and still do to this day. And it's interestingly enough that you actually dissected their music to find out, you know, how they were doing it. And a lot of their music, what they did, they dissected a lot of Black music. Motown
Absolutely.
artists, yeah. So so it's just it amazes me with even like the Rolling Stones, how so many of them gravitated to Black music, which made their music, what it is today. So it just amazes me. And I like for that history to be told so people don't get it twisted.
Yeah, and they pay tribute to a lot of these artists.
They
If you
do.
think
They
of some of
do.
the early Beatles songs like Dizzy Miss Lizzie and Please
They
Mr.
do.
Postman,
Yeah.
they loved Motown.
Yeah. Well, who didn't?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Well,
really?
it's funny too. What people don't, I don't know if the average person knows this, but when the Beatles early on, they used to get these Motown records, and Paul McCartney would bring them into the studio and say, "Make my bass sound like that,"
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
that's one of the reasons why the Beatles, the bass on a lot of the records is quite prominent. It's because they were trying to
Yeah.
imitate that Motown
Yeah.
foundation. You know,
Him, Elvis Presley, all of them, but one thing, like you said, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones did acknowledge it. And Elvis Presley actually acknowledged it later in life, that he was influenced by Black music. And then his music, that movie that just came out about him, also shows that. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So now you have had an illustrious career spanning over 30 years. Your work has been nominated for 3 Grammys Awards. You've topped the Billboard dance charts and received music radio play worldwide. On top of all of this, you have mastered various albums of icons such as like Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, uh, Tony Bennett. There's so much more that I didn't mention. What has been your proudest moment, musical moment?
I've actually given that a lot of thought because somebody asked me that recently. And, of course, being involved with albums that were nominated for Grammys is always a star in your cap. And having some songs top the charts in the UK, that's been great. For me, and I reflected on this. I worked on a jingle, and it was for a big, huge client. It was for Liberty Medical, and they're all over TV, all over radio. And through connections I had, I ended up doing a jingle for them.
Oh, okay.
And for me, so I tell this story, and I love it. I laugh this. I was at the gym one day working out in the morning, and they had CNN on, and all of a sudden I hear Liberty, and then I see Wilford Brimley talking about Liberty Medical, and it's my music in the background, and then my jingle. To me, that was a huge moment in my career. I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
it's not what I expected. It's not the gold records that I have or these other things, but to me, that was so cool to see that and hear my musical work on this major network while I was working out. And I always joke, I'm like, yeah, I worked out extra hard that day because I was so inspired. So that I have that's probably one of my landmark achievements, just out of the blue, seeing something that you've done out in the public
Yeah.
and on a national level. So I'd have to say that's probably it.
Well, that's hot. That's hot.
Yeah.
That's not a
Right. Thanks.
that's not shabby at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have a commercial. So now Reader's Digest recruited you with your production at BMG Studio to join
Yeah.
their record label in New York. What was that like, and who were some of the artists you worked with?
So this was fantastic for me because I was in college, and I probably needed to grow up a little bit.
Hmm.
And I finished this really intense 4 years at Fredonia State University in their Tonmeister sound recording program. That was very difficult to get into, very math intensive, very studio, all night, very intense program. And I got recruited through the college for an interview to go to New York City, and that's when I started working I ran 3 rooms out of BMG Studios. I also did work at Sony, and that's why I worked on all like the Johnny Cash. I did 2 Johnny Cash box sets. We had access to the Roy Orbison 3 tracks and Ella Fitzgerald tapes, and we cleaned
Oh,
all these
wow.
up, and that's where I really built my musical chops with these amazing artists. I did, probably like 450 albums. Now that's probably maybe 150 box sets, but I look at albums as CD worth of material, you know,
Wow.
and and that's what really. And I worked with some amazing mentors. That's the other thing that I really, some of the engineers I work with just really helped me hone my skills and my chops. And then I was very fortunate. I had an amazing, I'd even say my boss, but my superior, this woman, Jenny Hudson, who really just took me under her wing and just taught me about everything from
Okay.
just living in New York to how to listen and how to deal with, issues at the corporate level. So I was very fortunate to have these amazing people that helped shape me to understand the ins and outs of the music industry from an industry that was more safe. It was more of a corporate industry. So that when I got out into the real industry, I don't want to say real, but the more cutthroat areas of the industry, I knew how to handle myself and what to expect and how to guide my outcomes.
Well, you're better than me because I never did learn how to navigate through it. So
It's not
I'm
easy.
serious. I really, I had a love hate for the music industry because it was too much for me. So I had to find ways to be in it and not in it. And so I was able to do that. But
It's
yeah,
not an easy industry because it's very egocentric, but it's an industry where you need an ego to survive. If you're working
yeah,
with artists,
yeah.
and they have to get up every night in front of thousands of people, they need an ego. They need, thick skin, and that carries over to their personal life. And then if they're not mature enough or been in it long enough to navigate how to turn that on and off, it's hard to deal with some of these people. And I'm sure you've had that, aspect quite a bit. So what do you do? It's either you either suck it up sometimes, or you just move on.
Yeah, well, for me, actually, I didn't mind the egos. And so what I did, I ended up doing artist development where I would actually work with those because the ego part doesn't bother me because I know half of it is not necessarily real.
Yeah.
But just really, you know what I mean? But just really getting them to really get in touch with who they really are and what it is they were really wanting to achieve and how we're going to go about doing that. But yeah, but it was just the I guess I don't know what to say. It was the underminded kind of stuff, you know.
Oh,
How you know how they
the
won't
people
let some of the
surrounding it
artists read
undermining it.
how they won't let some of the artists read their contracts. You know, no, just sign the paper. You don't need to read it.
Yep.
You know, we got it all taken care of. And then the artists are gullible enough to do that. So, you know, my thing was just to really help them. No, you can't do that. You need to read. You need to know what it is. So, anyways, the artist development was the way for me to be in it and not in it. So now, Anthony, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but now I want you to talk about the work that you did with Sony because that brought you to San Francisco. And I think that's,
Yes.
of course, when I met you and then, you know, was able to come to your home and your studio and stuff like that. So tell me what that was like working for Sony Music and
So,
what did you do?
having I just being in so when I was at Reader's Digest, we would actually, whoever we licensed or worked with on a project, a lot of times I'd have to go to their facility to work on the master tapes.
Okay.
So when I did like the Roy Orbison or the Johnny Cash projects or some other things, I'd go to Sony. So I met some really good people at Sony Studios. And then I had some people out on the West Coast, and I had another former worker from Reader's Digest who went out. And this was right, right in the .com air, the explosion, so Sony Music and Look Smart, which was supposed to be the next Google, believe it or not,
Okay.
search engine. um, they they created this investment called Red Band Broadcasting. And so I was brought out there. I never thought I would leave New York City. I thought it was the
Okay.
center of the universe. And then I got to San Francisco and I'm like, this is a beautiful place. It's like a beautiful place with sane energy instead of crazy energy, and there's no snow, So, um, but for me, it was great because it took me out of my comfort zone, and I became the audio production or the audio director or the director of audio
Okay.
production, if I recall.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we were doing lifestyle programming. We were doing podcasts before podcast was even
Podcast.
conceived, you
Okay.
know so we were doing these lifestyle programs that were being delivered by um Real Media Player and even whatever the player was that Microsoft had at the time in 2000 2001. But we had this amazing background where we would bring bands in, we would bring in authors and interview them and put these shows around that. So that's, to me, that was really exciting. And I learned a lot at that job about being on the fly, making stuff happen. You have this artist for an hour. You got to maximize an interview, a couple in studio performances, and make sure it's done right. These people don't
Yeah.
want to have to stop and start and redo a song. So for me, I put me on the spot, and I kind of thrived in that crazy environment in the studio, and I loved it. Fortunately and unfortunately, um, what happened is, we the economy started to drop out because of the .com bomb, and
Okay.
we didn't have enough funding to continue, and we were also waiting around for 3G at the time, if you can believe it, right? Because we needed people to download things on a regular basis, and easier, and we didn't make it in time, so we ended up losing our funding. But for me, that was a godsend because I was already established in San Francisco. I was already on the board of governors for San Francisco. I was elected to the second vice president, and I met a lot of people such as yourself out there and started getting involved in the hip hop community. It forced me to start my own company, which is my mastering company, which was Xtream Audio. and
Okay.
and I think, life happens, things happen for a reason in life, and that just blew the doors off my career and opened up all these amazing opportunities. And the majority of it was because I started working in that hip hop area, and they weren't, and that clientele was not used to being treated with respect.
Mm.
And I remember having these rap artists over to my studio, and they're like, "Can we get some water?" I'm like, "Sure." So I gave them some bottled water. They pull out this money and start paying. I'm like, "You don't owe me anything." Like, why, man? Every studio charges $5 for a bottle of water. I'm like, "You're in my studio. You're my guest.
Yeah.
Water is for free."
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
"Really?"
Yeah.
And because of that, they told everybody, and next thing you know, I started going up the chain with these hip hop artists. I remember I did an album with his producer brought the album over. I didn't work with him in person, but E40, huge name in hip hop. He blew up after that. And JT the Bigger Figure. And then I worked with a group, The Teen, that had a song with Nas and Nate Dogg. And all these people, because they're like, "Hey man, this guy who thought he was going to be Eddie Van Halen is great to work with." And so as much as it was great to work for Sony and work in that environment, I was very excited to have success on my own. And I've never
Yeah.
been able to stand on my own 2 feet and control my own destiny. And I was really excited about that. And it worked.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So now, what I wanted to know now, so you're still involved with the Grammy organization. Tell me in what capacity?
It's gotten less and less over the years, unfortunately, because I love the organization. So when I moved back to upstate New York and Buffalo, um, out of 11 years, 8 years, they've brought me out to sit on a couple nominating committees. So I did a lot of work with that. And then I actually chaired the historical committee out of Chicago for a couple of years. So I'm still a member of the P&E wing, which is the producer and engineers wing. And I'm still in contact with them. I think, and I do, I've been doing some Grammy on the Hill work.
Okay.
So I did that this past year, where I would be an advocate for New York, and um, they try to set up appointments for us with certain legislators to talk about artist related legislation and trying to help push through things that are going to benefit artists and songwriters and engineers. So I've been doing that with the Grammys. I love that. I'm
Okay.
hoping to do I'm hoping to do more work with that. Um,
Okay.
but I miss going out to LA. It was I just
That's just going to
I'm in,
ask you, do you ever run into Larry? Have you seen Larry in any of these
I haven't.
events?
I wish, because he's such a good guy, and I haven't talked to him in years. And I just looked at him as like this super amazing, production, you know, Grammy guy who's a teddy bear,
Yeah.
um, So, and then there's other I don't know if you remember Victor Ledin, who was on our board. I've stayed in a lot of
Oh,
contact with him.
yes, I
Matter
do.
of
Because
fact,
his wife, Marina, was with him as well. His wife,
yes,
right?
and
Yeah.
those are the people that I did a lot of work with on these Grammy albums too. Like they're always doing stuff, and I would see Victor when I'd go out to LA, and
Okay.
I still stay in contact with a lot of those um, engineers and producers. I mean, they're the guys who are making the records right now. They're the top dog, and had so many wonderful stories um, of being with these people. I tell my students, I said, they're like, "Oh, we love Pink Floyd." I said, I sat and had dinner with you know, oh my gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. Alan Parsons, who produced Dark Side of the Moon, and it was a who's of everybody. We sat around and had drinks overlooking the ocean, and traded stories and things like that. Sitting with,
Yeah.
you know, um, Roy Thomas Baker, and asking him about Queen, and him going, like, "Do you want some tea?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so I had these people who were still doing stuff in the industry, but I had access to, and me, I'm like, well, I'm never going to stop learning. So if I've access to these people who've done some of the albums that I grew up to, why wouldn't I ask them about them? Why wouldn't I learn?
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
think these people never like to stop. They like sharing information, never stop wanting to share. And
Yeah.
so as much as I'm there as somebody who's done all these great things, I look at it as an opportunity to learn. And I think that's one of the things that I has helped me and propelled me moving forward is, what can
Yeah.
I do next? How can I learn? Admitting I need to learn. I need
Yeah.
to do
Oh,
these things.
absolutely.
And that's what the Grammy organization did for me. I think it's I still love it, and I tell everybody it's more than just the Grammys. So you don't even hear about the Grammy cares organization that helps addiction and people who are homeless and
That's
artists.
Music Cares. Music
Music
Cares.
cares, right?
Yeah, Music Cares.
And all these other things that they do. It's not just who performs on CBS on Sunday night. As a matter of fact, they have to put those artists on Saturday or on Sunday night because they need ratings to generate income to help people who need stuff and put instruments in schools. So
absolutely. So now you are the founder and principal of sound engineer at Xtream Audio Mastering. This is your baby, right? Since 2001. Yeah. You work with artists on all levels, all over the world. What is it that you do with them or for them? Tell me about that.
Well, so mastering is a very unique process. It's the end of the creative process for an album or a single. So you have, artists who go in the studio, they record, they take those recordings, they mix them down, and then they send them to me to be finally processed. I treat them, I create a very commercial sounding song that's going to translate across all platforms, from your earbuds to your car to streaming services. It's almost like color correction for a video. So if you're shooting a movie, you have all these different scenes from different angles, and you have to make them look the same, right? So you color correct this in a scene, and that's the same thing with each song. Some songs might have too much bass, or they're not bright enough. They're not up to a commercial standard with volume. So I take and take all those songs, make them sound coherent, and help make the realize the artist's musical vision across the album or the EP, and create this cohesive piece of art, and help them get it to the streaming services and out there so it stands up to everybody else, everybody else's music. A lot of people are doing stuff at home versus artists who have a huge budget. So you need to bring in professionals in some aspects of the creative process to help you get in that ballpark. And mastering is one of the areas where you can do everything else at home, but you go to a mastering engineer, they're going to at least get you sounding like you can compete. Like I have someone say, maybe sound like Jay-Z. Well, I can't. He spends $10,000 on 1 week in a studio. You're spending $100 on your whole album, but I can at least get you in the ballpark so that you don't sound like an amateur, So
so it doesn't even matter what their budget. So you're able to work with different budgets to be able to accomplish that.
Yes. And I have various pricing depending on who it is. Like I offer students a huge discount. When I say I work with people all over the world, I have people who upload files to me, and I started doing mixing as well. Like I'm working on a hip hop project right now where I'm taking all the instruments, the tracks that they've recorded, and I put them together, blend them, and then I'll master them. But I joke that there's probably an FBI file on me, because from like 2010 to 2015, I was working with some of the biggest artists in Russia. They didn't have access to mastering studios. All the places didn't have access to Western gear. They didn't update any of their, facilities. And through a connection, I stumbled upon these two producers who are extremely active. And so they used to upload files to me, and then they'd pay me via Western Union, because I couldn't take any credit card payments because they're in Russia and there's a boycott on them. Wow. So, but I was working with this album with Lev Lesheko, and they're like, he's the Frank Sinatra of Russia. I'm like, are you kidding me? They're like, oh yeah. So I looked him up, and I'm like, this guy's huge. And I started doing all these other big artists from Russia. It was funny because I'm like, wow, no one knows this, but I'm catering to the stars of Russia in the late 2000s. So.
How funny. So it's interesting. So like when let's say an artist comes to you and they want you to master their work. So do you sit down with them? Do you sit down and go, what's the process? How do you find out what it is they want? Do you interview them? Do you listen to their music first? What do you do?
All the above, but it's getting less and less interactive. So I would love to talk on the phone with people, but it's happening less. People don't have time. So usually what happens is people send me a link to download their files. And so I'll get their files, I'll talk to them, or I'll email them, or we text, and I asked for, you know, what's their vision? What are they looking for? Are they looking for quality over volume, which is always an issue? Are they looking for a certain sound? Do they have an artist that they want to emulate? Can they point me in the right direction to listen to something that might
Okay.
give me an idea? So they, some people want this analog sound. They want it really like round and smooth, or other like dance artists, they want it bright and in your face, and everything in between. So I have to figure that out, like what's the sound that they're going for, and then work on achieving that. And I usually I'm usually really close with mastering. I usually nail it within the first pass.
Okay.
Mixing, it's very subjective, so I'll go back and forth with the mixing process, but I send them clips for review, you know um and just let them hear it. And then again, it's not my baby, it's their baby, it's their vision. So I'm very big on, it's not what I want, it's what you want. Tell me what you
Yeah.
want and I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have to put my stamp on it. That's just not what it's
Yeah.
about. It's about,
Yeah.
me being a conduit to you getting to the end of your project and you being proud of it. and
Yeah.
and, and I think that's helped me succeed a lot, because it's, again, I'm just facilitating your vision.
Wow. Well, it sounds really exciting and it sounds like a lot of work. And it sounds like you really have to be able to, number one, know your music and know what you're doing. And because of your expertise and all the experience that you've had, I'm sure you can just pull stuff out of a box. You've done it so much, you're able to kind of do it with a little bit of ease. And I'm not saying that it's all simple, but because this is what you do, it probably is simple to you.
It is to a point. Sometimes there are issues, and I'm a good problem solver, and I'm a good fixer when it comes to audio issues. And there are more and more tools on the market that help me fix noises or problems. And it's funny. I had a bunch of high school students come in to the college that I work at, where I'm the chair of the music department at this college, Villa Maria. And just explaining to them about microphones and things. I was telling them a story of where I was working on a classical piece of music and remastering an old piece of music. It was I forgot who the artist was, but it was one of the first ever recordings of the Vivaldi Four Seasons. And there was a solo violin note that was a little flat. I used auto tune that you find on all these modern singers to fix this note, and nobody knew it. And I didn't tell anybody for years,
Okay.
because they're like,
Wow.
"How'd you fix that note?" And I'm like, "I just have ways, because it was so out of the box to use a modern tool for vocals on a solo violin that was, from 60 years ago. Uh, and I didn't want all the purists to get mad at me.
Yeah.
They weren't. They were just astounded by the result. But it's like those are tools and things that keep me on the edge of my seat, because I can use them in non-traditional ways, and that's what makes it fun and a challenge and not easy.
Well, you know what? So as you said that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, oh my God, how do you keep up with the new technology I mean, because you have to stay on top of what's new and what's happening, right?
Yes, it's hard to do because there's so much technology coming at you. But you know what? My students keep me up to date
Okay.
and on my toes.
That'll
They're like,
work.
"What about this? Do you know about this?" I'm like, "No, I guess I have homework to do." So
Yeah.
um, I have a couple students who I've become very close with, who are DJs. And the past 2 years, that's what's helped spur my new music, is I've gotten into the EDM and performing, and it's easier to be a solo act, I guess, than to deal with a band when you have schedules and kids and day jobs. So I've gotten into DJing, but with a live element to it. And that was really, brought on by students challenging me. Hey, if
Okay.
if, if we finish these projects and early, you got to get behind the deck and do a set. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. And then now I've been out. We've got 2 shows coming up, so
Okay. Okay. Nice.
it's,
Yeah.
where you take inspiration wherever it comes. And if you feel that those inspiring elements, rising up inside of you, you just got to ride it out and go for it and learn.
Hmm. So now tell me about this upcoming album that you have coming out. What's that all about?
So I released an EP, I guess last year, maybe 18 months ago, and I had 2 songs off of it that I put out as singles. And that was a departure. I was in this band A&L, which was a band that started just for fun, but we ended up having a lot of success. So we just continued, I kept writing music for it and releasing singles. And then COVID hit, and it kind of just fizzled out just due to not being able to do anything for a year and a half. So I started writing music over COVID. So I had that album that I put out, I think last spring or maybe last winter. I forgot, but that spurred me to get into doing pop music. And
Okay.
so I'm into taking like EDM beats and dance music, but from a very pop approach, very pop melodies, very vocal centric, but also guitar. So I had success with that. I had my song "Love Is the Answer," which I think on various
I
charts.
like that. I like that song. I like
Thank
that
you. That
song. I just kept playing it over and over and over. And then
I
I just
love
said, you know what? Let me just make it a favorite. It's on Spotify. I just made it a favorite.
that's great. Well,
Yeah.
that song, you know, went up to number 8 in the UK on various charts.
Okay.
So it did very well. It did really well in Brazil, and I forgot how it got to Brazil, and then I realized I was contacted to do a Brazilian TV show, and I didn't think anything of it. I did the interview, and then when I saw the final result, it was a big show in Brazil on regular TV, and then I was like getting 300, 400, 500 plays a day on that
Wow.
song, and I'm like, where did that come from? So that's what this new album. I don't have a title for the new EP yet. I'm playing around with some titles, and I'm finishing up the EP. I have 5 songs. All the music's written, all the words are written. I just need to record the vocals, which is really not my strong suit. I'm not the best vocalist. I love to sing. 1 or 2 of these out of the 5, I might have another vocalist
Come in and
take the
do it.
lead.
Yeah.
So, uh, so we'll see. I'm excited about it, but I'm also a perfectionist, and I'm like, okay, no one's going to hear this little tiny thing that you've done, but I hear it. So
You
I'm a
hear it.
little bit
Yeah.
behind the 8 ball on it, but I'm looking forward to getting it out. I'm shooting for beginning of May.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, keep me posted with that because, like I said, I love the song. And so when you're making these records like that and they are such a big hit across the country, does it pay you well to do that? Does it pay well to be?
No,
No,
I'll be completely
I
honest. So
always wondered about that.
for every up and coming artist who is checks out this interview, it really doesn't. You can't make money on streaming unless you're getting millions upon millions of streams, and I'm not getting millions of
Okay.
streams at all.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when you're the Taylor Swifts, the Jay-Z's, the Beyoncé's, um that's when you make money off of streaming.
Okay.
You're really making money off of touring and performing, which I'm not touring. I can't tour. I have a family, a job. If I could,
Okay.
I've applied to play at some festivals, which I would love to do this summer. I don't know if I don't know if my music is festival ready. They want more dance oriented hardcore, but I
Okay.
have some mixes. But where I'm making money is I've been fortunate. I've teamed up with some people who've placed music in commercials or movies, and even though my stuff hasn't really been in a lot, I've had stuff in soap operas in the past, but um they put music in retail and other establishments, and I might make a couple $100 off of a song at the end of the year. It's not
Okay.
killer money, but it helps me um break even with what I've invested in my own music. And for me though, I have a studio. Like I'm talking to you right now from my home studio, but it's more than a home studio. It's quite elaborate. You know, I when we moved into the house, we built this. So right down to the studs, I was able to soundproof it, and
I wish you could
I
give
have,
us a little scan around the
I
room.
wonder if you guys can kind of see it from behind here.
I can
You know,
see
I've
some
got
of
all
it.
my
Uh-huh.
guitars, I've got
Okay.
all my
Yeah.
DJ equipment way in the back, you
Okay.
know, so
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff. And then if we turn this around, I've got my computer, my
Okay.
speakers, you know,
Okay.
so it's quite elaborate and it works really well. And I've actually worked with a bunch of artists in here,
Okay.
you know, for let me see if I can balance this again here, you know, for tracking and mixing and mastering and doing vocals. So the point I'm making is I'm able to do this with a very low budget. I can do all the production myself. I'm not relying on anybody. So if I can get a couple $100 at the end of the year and that allows me to put it towards a video or um, some advertising, then I'm ahead of the game. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, you know what? And I think it's important to be realistic because I think sometimes young people have this vision in their heads that just because you're doing music, you're a millionaire. You know, everybody that's doing it. And I think it's just time for people to get real and just let them know that no, everybody's not a millionaire making music.
no, they're not. Very few people are. But that being said, if you are a musician who works hard and you play out a lot, you could take a map, and if you could draw a circle around 150 miles, and all the cities that are within that range, which is what, a 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour drive at the max, and
Hmm.
you can go to all those cities and perform on a regular basis, and you've got a good set, good music, you got your t-shirts, your thumb drives, your CDs, you can actually make a good living doing that. It's a hustle. I don't want to say it's a young man's game or young woman's game, but it is, you know, but you can make a living doing what you love. And
Yeah.
then using social media and build up your social media and your marketing skills, you can do okay. You know, for me, I'm kind of like the armchair musician. um, I'm releasing music. I'm like the Beatles, as I say. They stopped touring, right? But they still put out music and did well. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm having fun. I'm doing videos. I'm using social media, but I'm also using this as a story to tell. And I'm using this as a platform to learn and then see what works and then bring it into the classroom. And to me, that's what's exciting because I actually have credibility with my students. They might not
Yeah.
like my music, but they're like, you're out there. We saw you on the cover of this magazine. We saw you doing this. Tell us. So to me, that it's a win-win situation. It's like a
Okay.
game. I'm playing a game that of but something I truly love and have a passion at in doing. I love making music. I love recording. And if I can
Yeah.
learn and see what, like, if you told me last year that TikTok would be breaking music, I'd be like, you're crazy. That little platform, you know, but here we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to learn
Yeah.
all these things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So now we're getting ready to kind of switch gears here real quickly.
Okay.
So I would like for you to tell me three people that have inspired you.
Three people have inspired me. So, well, I'm going to say my parents, counting as one. So, I've been very fortunate. My dad passed away about 10 years ago, but he was extremely supportive. Same with my mom. They were very supportive in anything that I wanted to do. And, um, and were just there for me whenever I needed them. So
Okay.
they were a huge inspiration. I also, as I mentioned before, my boss, and I hate to call her my boss, but my boss in New York City, Jenny Hudson, she's a lifelong friend. I still talk with her, and she just was somebody who helped me grow up. You know,
Okay.
I hate to say that, but she did. She was there to say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, and celebrate me when I did things that were great, but also expose me to so much in New York City, and was just a wonderful individual. And you know, I'm thinking of the third person because there are a couple people that I could point out. Now I could always go with the
Well,
Beatles or
that's why I
somebody.
say three. I know it's always more, but
Yeah, but you know what? I also have I have a band director, my high school band director, Mr. Gary Stiff, who was just such a, I don't know how to say this. He just had a really nice way about inspiring you to want to learn.
Okay.
And he, he was strict, but not strict in the sense where you were scared. I've had other band directors who had an iron baton, but he just made you want to practice and be better. He's extremely inspirational, and really, he was one of the people who got me into recording. I was in the band, and one day he's like, "Hey, we have this reel to reel and a bunch of tape and some microphones. You want to play around with those?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I used to record the wind ensemble concerts and whatnot, and I'm like, "Wow, this is just 2 tracks. What I could do if I had 4 or 8." And that's what got me to want to go to college and learn that. So I have to say
Okay.
he's my third inspiration.
Nice. Very nice. And I'm sure, it's interesting how teachers come up a lot. And I think that, one of these days, because I am a teacher, one of these days, teachers will be highly regarded because we are the ones that inspire people to become who they become.
Absolutely. You know what? I think when people get out of school after a while, they start to think and realize what these teachers have done for them, I think they start to appreciate it. I have some
Oh, yeah.
students that I haven't seen in 10 years who pick me up and give me a huge hug when they see me,
Yeah.
or call me
Yeah.
out if they're playing. And right out of school, they might not have realized what they walked away with knowledge wise, but
Yeah.
when it sinks in, they start to realize, wow, these
Yeah.
people really
Yeah.
went above and beyond.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So one of these days, teachers will be highly regarded and paid appropriately.
Well, I don't know about that. I hope.
No, it will happen. It will happen. I believe that. So now, what would the 9-year-old Anthony say to the grown man Anthony today? What would he say to you?
What would the 9-year-old? I don't know. I don't know if it would if he would say something to me, or would I think it would be more questions. I think the 9-year-old would say, "Are you still making music?" Because I've been wanting to do music since I was born. I
Okay.
think I think that's what he would be. I think he would say, "I hope you're still making music. Are you still making it happen? Are you famous yet?" That's probably what he would say. Are you famous yet? And I'd be like, "Well, in my own right, I am." So
Uh-huh. Oh,
I
yeah.
think it would be more like, I hope you're still making music. I hope you're still following your dream of creating and producing and working in the music industry. And I would look at him and say, I am, and I'm having
Yeah.
fun doing it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So, Anthony, as we begin to close the show, remind the audience how they can reach you and learn more about your audio mastering work and your upcoming release.
So if I'm on all social media, so if you search like Anthony Casuccio, um, Facebook, Instagram, it's Anthony Casuccio Music, all one word. Twitter is Anthony Casuccio. TikTok, I think it's Anthony Casuccio. Just reach out to me. And
Yeah.
that way, my company is Xtream Audio, which is XTREAMAUDIO.com. It's a funky spelling. I know. That's a whole other lesson. We could spend an hour on branding, but you can look for my company, or just do a Google search for Anthony Casuccio Music, and you'll see all these sites, and reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear that you saw me on this show. And if you have any music projects, I'd love to be part of them. And I'd love for you to just like my pages and keep a lookout for my new music and check out my old music.
All right. That's awesome. So, Anthony, thank you for taking out the time with me to be on Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. To my listening audience, I'd like to thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, and share, and come back. So, Anthony, I got to have you back when that album comes out. Okay.
Absolutely. What a pleasure to talk with you.
No, it's been great. It's been great. So, thank you again. See you guys all later.